Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everybody. My name is Tyas Dwi Febriansyah and I'm from Public Administration, 6th semester class F, from UIN Sunan Gunung Jati Bandung. The subject is International Organization and Administration. And now here I will tell you about foreign policy of Cuba. Before we start the discussion or the explanation from me, and first I will give you a table of contents of this discussion. First, I will tell you about Cuban foreign policy, Raúl Castro's leadership era. Second, Cuban foreign policy against Latin American countries, and the third, Cuban foreign policy against the European Union, and fourth, Cuba's foreign relation to the United States of the Fidel Castro era, and the last one is normalization of Cuba's foreign relations with the United States in the Raúl Castro era. Alright, and the first material is called Cuban Foreign Policy, Raúl Castro's leadership era. Raúl Castro has a foreign policy that is different from Fidel, where Raúl Castro supports openness with other countries. This openness is a reaction to the economic reforms launched by Raúl Castro by adding foreign investment in Cuba. Raúl Castro gave a statement to the National Assembly in 2012 that the view that Cuba is the only country that can live without working must be changed. In 2013, the Cuban government made it easier for its people to travel abroad, with Cubans able to stay in another country for a maximum of 2 years, which in the previous period limited it to 11 months. And if more than that, they were not allowed to return to Cuba. And the next one, I get the Cuban foreign policy against Latin American countries. The chaos of the Cuban economy in 1990 became a lesson for the Raúl Castro government not to depend on one country and encourage diversification of trade. One of the steps taken by Latin American countries in improving Cuba's foreign relation by lifting the suspension of membership of the Cuban Organization of American States, or OAS, in 2009. This revocation is due an economic reform launched by Cuba and also the start of an openness in the economic sector, as well as foreign relations with countries in Latin America. On the other hand, Latin American countries are trying to push the OAS to lift the suspension based on solidarity for Cuba. Cuba also received an invitation to attend the 7th Summit of the Americas by Panama as the host of the summit itself. The Summit of the America is a forum for countries on the America continent to discuss regional issues, where heads of states discuss a common policy to address issues that are challenging on the American continent. The improved relation between Latin countries and Cuba were used by Cuba to offer its economic agenda, so that foreign investment could enter Cuba massively. Next, I have a Cuban foreign policy against the European Union. Economic reforms made Cuba closer to the European Union, where Cuba saw that the European Union was a potential friend with all its huge economic resources, as well as all the assistance that was ready to be given to Cuba. Cuba's relation with European Union have not always been on good terms, with the European Union itself demanding that Cuba release journalists who were arrested by the government in 2003. With the release of these prisoners, Cuba and the European Union started high-level political talks in 2008, with Cuba responding that that this was the right direction between the two sides. Normalization of relation with the European Union allows Cuba to conduct international trade without any restriction. In 2008 until 2014, the European Union provided assistance to Cuba in the amount of $90 million to boost the Cuban economy and to promote social modernization. In 2014, Cuba and the European Union drafted a bilateral negotiation, namely the European Union Cuba Political Dialogue and Cooperation Agreement, a bilateral agreement to improve bilateral relations between the two parties. The 3 points are political dialogue, sectoral policy and cooperation, and trade cooperation. The European Union itself has become Cuba's main partner, with a total of 3 tourists who come to Cuba are European Union citizens. Alright, the next one is Cuba's foreign relations to the United States of the Fidel Castro era. The normalization of Cuba is an interesting to study, with both countries having a long history. The United States has had a great influence on Cuban society from the first contact during the Spanish War until after World War II. Many United States companies invested their capital in Cuba. In 2013, the Cuban government made it easier for its people to travel abroad, with Cubans able to stay in another country for a maximum of 2 years, which in the previous period limited it to 11 months, and if more than that, they were not allowed to return to Cuba. Since Fidel Castro stepped down from the presidency, Cuba has had a different approach. Raúl Castro saw the importance of normalizing with the United States, in contrast to his brother, who has a policy which is conservative. Fidel Castro is one of the world's most recognizable leaders. This is because he is aggressive in making a foreign policy. One of its policies is to interfere with the internal politics of other countries, such as sending Cuban troops to African countries, and also regarding the Cuban Missile Crisis, which has become a world headline. As far how many examples to dynamics of Cuba's foreign relations with the United States. A. Cuban Revolution. Cuban relationship with the United States has become a long way, but here we'll examine Cuba's relation with the United States from the emergence of Fidel Castro as revolutionary figure who brought Cuba from the time of President Batista to a communist socialist state. The Cuba Revolution began with the 26th July 1953 movement led by Fidel Castro, with the aim of overthrowing the Cuban government by attacking the barracks of the Santiago de Cuba army. In the 1950s, Cuba was very dependent on the United States, especially in the economic sector, especially with the sugar commodity and the Batista military regime. for the support policies and the United States in the Cold War, prohibiting any opposition because it contained communist and socialist groups. Fidel invited international journalists to interview him, one of whom was Herbert L. Matthews, journalist from the New York Times. In an interview with the New York Times, Fidel Castro revealed that he was carrying out a mission to bring Cuba to a democracy, so that this made him more sympathetic to Fidel Castro and guerrillas. In this interview, it was also started how corruption, dictatorship, and employment made Fidel Castro support stronger, especially for the middle and lower economic community. Next, the United States asset nationalization. After coming to power, Fidel then issued a policy of economic reform, one of which was by carrying out agrarian reform and then by nationalizing the Cuban economy. The policy to nationalize was a Cuban reaction to the United States policy of reducing sugar import quota. In 1960, the presence of the Soviets was on the reason for the United States to limit imports, with the Cuban government itself wanting to diversify its trade relation. Precisely in February 1960, the Soviets offered Cuba to buy Havana sugar, which the United States saw as an offer to cooperate with the Soviet. Cuba responded to this policy of reducing the quota by nationalizing U.S. property in Cuba, arguing that the proceeds from the sale would be used to pay for the cost of the nationalization. This led the United States government to sanction the Cuba economic and cancel imports of 700,000 tons of sugar, which it was planning to buy 1960. The USSR then took this opportunity by buying the remaining sugar that the United States canceled on July 20, 1960, and the Cuba nationalized 3 United States sugar factory. This incident made Cuba's relation with the United States even tighter, with the countries antagonizing with each other. Cuba itself, especially socialist radical like Guevara, argues that nationalizing foreign assets is the right way to eliminate capitalist influence, which he sees as an enemy to socialists. And the next C, Bay of Pig invasion. In April 1960, the United States CIA recruited Cuban immigrants who were in Florida. Especially, they recruited members of the Frente Revolucionario Democrático, or FRC, an active group against Fidel Castro government. One of the figures from Fidel Castro opposition group is Jose Miro Cardona, who is a former member of Fidel's government, who later fled to Miami. The invasion took place in April 1961, with President Kennedy wanting as little U.S. involvement as possible in this invasion. The choice of location in the Bay of Pigs is due to its swampy condition and close proximity to the mountains, so that after successfully landing, it can change by the strategy to guerrilla warfare. The attacks began on the night of April 17 with bombers successful trying to destroy the military barracks in the Bay of Pigs, and followed by the troops trying to land in the Bay of Pigs. Fidel Castro learned of the attack at 3 a.m. that the rebels had carried out attacks Playa Giron and Playa Larga. The United States, through James Donovan, a lawyer representing the United States government, is negotiating to release 1,113 prisoners of war. The United States government compensated the exchange of prisoners by providing $53 million in the form of food, medicine, and agricultural equipment. And the last one, the Cuban Missile Crisis. At the end of May 1961, Cuba received an important visit by a Soviet delegation led by Biryuzov, one of the Soviet military generals, with the aim of placing the Soviet nuclear in Cuba. This was agreed. Fidel Castro, on advice of his core circle, are going to strengthen the communist position in Latin America, and especially to deter the United States from invading Cuba. By agreement reached by the Soviet delegation, and then a second meeting was held in Moscow with a Cuban delegation led by Raul Castro, and on July 8, an agreement was reached by both parties on the nuclear deployment in Cuba. President Kennedy then issues a policy of quarantining Cuba, placing a blockade of ships in international water and blocking Soviet ships from entering Cuban territory. With the long diplomacy of this crisis resolved, the condition put forward by the Soviets were for the United States to withdraw its missile from Turkey and then not invade to Cuba. The relationship between Nikita Khrushchev and Fidel Castro himself later strained. This was due Castro's inability to trust the decision issued by Nikita Khrushchev after the missile crisis. And the next matter is normalization of Cuba's foreign relations with the United States in the Raul Castro era. Normalization of Cuba with the United States is very difficult, with both countries having their respective demands. But this can be overcome with a helping hand and encouragement from various parties who wish to see Cuba as a more independent country and also hope that Cuba can join the world system. Cuban immigrant residing in Florida began supporting the United States to normalize foreign relations with Cuba, with a poll conducted by Florida International University. 65% of survey participants supporting the normalization policy. The normalization process between Cuba and United States itself began in 2012, the second year of the Obama administration. This was marked by Barack Obama ordering John Kerry as the new foreign minister to review the normalized relation with Cuba. Normalization also addressed the release of prisoners, with Cuba demanding that the United States release 5 Cuban citizens held in the United States, known as Cuban 5, namely 5 Cuban intelligence arrested in Florida 1998. Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper said that Canada supports Cuba's future that is oriented towards freedom, democracy, and human rights. Harper himself also said that Canada's role was to facilitate the two countries to carry out dialogue without interfering in the negotiation process. One of the important parties who played a role in normalizing Cuba's relation with the United States was Pope Francis, where he pushed for normalization of relations between Cuba and United States of America. In March 2013, Pope Francis himself sent a letter to Raul Castro and also to Barack Obama. Next, the normalization of diplomatic relations between Cuba and the United States was followed by the opening of embassies in the two countries, with the two presidents sending letters to each other regarding the decision to open embassies in both countries. The letter state that the opening of the permanent mission will be held on July 20, 2015. It was emphasized again from the Grandma newsletter, which is a media company affiliated with the PCC, that mutual respect between the two countries must be the basis for the negotiation process. It was also discussed about the occupation of the United States at Guantanamo demands the United States on return Guantanamo to the Cuban government. On July 20, the opening of the Cuban embassy in Washington, with Bruno Rodriguez Parilla as Cuban foreign minister, together with John Kerry, presided over the opening of the embassy, starting with the raising of the Cuban flag in the United States. John Kerry said in the joint statement session that this opening was historic breakthrough, where since the 1960 Cuba and the United States broke off diplomatic relation. The opening of this embassy also enhanced the status of the Cuban embassy from the intersection managed by the Swiss embassy since 1971. Alright, thank you for all of your attention watching these videos. I hope you like it and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Bye bye. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.